The vanishing. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly had been called without warning. Representatives from 47 worlds sat in their designated chambers, confusion rippling through the vast hall like waves across a disturbed pond. Admiral Court of the Assembly Security Council stood at the central platform, his 6 arms gesturing at the holographic display that dominated the space above him. The display showed empty star charts. Coordinates blinked red where something should have been but wasn't. 3 cycles ago, Court began, his voice amplified across the chamber, the Creathian Armada launched Operation Final Sweep. Their target was the Sol system, specifically the 3rd planet, designated Earth by its inhabitants. The Creathians classified humanity as a territorial threat and received assembly clearance for a containment action. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. Containment actions were common enough. Young species often expanded aggressively, and the older civilizations had learned that early intervention prevented larger conflicts later. The Creathians were known for their efficiency in such matters. The Armada consisted of 2,000 warships, Court continued. Battlecruisers, destroyers, carrier vessels and support craft. 3.7 million Creathian personnel. It was the largest single military deployment in the past century. He paused, his primary eyes scanning the assembly. As of this morning, we have received no communications from any vessel in that fleet. Long-range sensors detect no activity in the Sol system. No distress signals. No battle signatures. No debris fields. The chamber erupted. Representatives stood, some shouting questions, others demanding explanations. Court raised all 6 arms for silence. The Creathian High Command has requested an immediate investigation. The Assembly Council has approved the formation of a neutral inquiry team. That team departs within the hour. In a private briefing room adjacent to the main chamber, 3 individuals sat around a curved table. They had been selected for their unique qualifications and, perhaps more importantly, for their lack of political allegiance to either the Creathians or humanity. Commander Valen was a Creathian himself, though he served the Assembly rather than his homeworld. His scaled face bore the scars of 40 years of military service. He had lost his mate in a border conflict 2 decades ago and had no family ties that might compromise his objectivity. His yellow eyes studied the data pad before him with the intensity of someone who had seen too many mysteries turn into tragedies. Dr. Saris was a Luminari, a species of energy beings who existed in carefully constructed containment suits. Her people were renowned for their scientific detachment and their ability to observe without judgment. She had studied 17 different civilizations and had witnessed the rise and fall of empires with the same clinical interest she might give to chemical reactions. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated from the translation device on her suit's chest. "The energy signatures are wrong," she said, gesturing at her own display. "When a fleet of that size engages in combat, even a brief engagement, there should be residual radiation. Heat dispersion. Particle scatter. The sensors show nothing. It is as if the fleet simply ceased to exist." Ambassador Thorne was human though not from Earth. His ancestors had left the Sol system 3 centuries ago as part of an early colonization effort. The colony had eventually been absorbed into a larger interstellar collective, and Thorne had spent his life navigating the complex politics of multi-species governance. He understood both human psychology and galactic diplomacy, making him an ideal bridge between the 2 worlds. "What do we know about Earth itself?" Thorne asked. "Current status?" Valen tapped his data pad. "According to our latest intelligence, Earth has a unified planetary government. Population approximately 11 billion. They have achieved interstellar travel but have limited their expansion to their own solar system. No colonies beyond their local space. No history of aggressive expansion. By all accounts, they should not have posed any threat to Creathian interests. Then why did the Creathians launch a containment action?" Dr. Saris asked. "Border disputes," Valen replied, his voice tight. "Human mining operations in an asteroid field that the Creathians claimed as a resource zone. The humans refused to withdraw. The Creathians issued an ultimatum. The humans ignored it." He looked up from his pad. Standard escalation pattern. Nothing that should have resulted in the complete loss of an armada. The journey to the Sol system took 2 days aboard the investigation vessel, a sleek assembly ship designed for rapid response and neutral observation. The ship, named the Witness, was crewed by a small team of specialists, none of whom had any stake in the outcome of the investigation. As they approached the outer edge of the Sol system, the ship's sensors began their deep scan. The crew worked in silence, their instruments painting a picture of a surprisingly active solar system. Human vessels moved between the various planets and moons, going about their business as if nothing unusual had happened. "I'm detecting the Crethian fleet," the sensor officer reported. "Bearing 273 Mark 6. Distance approximately 3 million kilometers from Earth." Commander Valen stood behind the officer's station, his clawed hands gripping the back of the chair. "Life signs." The officer's face went pale. "None, Commander. All vessels are intact. All power systems are offline. No life signs detected on any ship." Dr. Saris moved to the sensor station, her containment suit humming softly. "Show me the fleet formation." The main view screen shifted to display the Crethian armada. 2,000 ships hung in the darkness of space, arranged in perfect battle formation. They surrounded Earth's orbital space like a net drawn tight. But there was no movement, no energy signatures, no sign that any living being remained aboard. "They're just floating there," Ambassador Thorne whispered. "Like ghost ships." "Hail Earth Traffic Control," Commander Valen ordered. "Inform them that we are an assembly investigation team and request permission to approach." The response came quickly, almost too quickly. A human face appeared on the communications screen. The woman was middle-aged with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a simple uniform with insignia that identified her as part of Earth's orbital defense network. "Investigation team, this is Captain Maria Chen of Earth Orbital Command. We've been expecting you. You are cleared to approach coordinates that we are transmitting now. Please dock at Station Unity. Representatives of the United Earth Council will meet you there." The connection ended before Commander Valen could ask any questions. "They were expecting us," Dr. Saris observed. "Interesting." Station Unity was a massive orbital platform positioned between Earth and its moon. As the witness approached, the investigation team could see the bustling activity of a thriving spacefaring civilization. Ships came and went, cargo was loaded and unloaded, and humans moved about their business with calm efficiency. It was not the behavior of a species that had just faced annihilation. Captain Chen met them at the docking port. She was shorter than Ambassador Thorne, which made her quite small by galactic standards, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. 2 other humans accompanied her, both wearing similar uniforms but carrying no visible weapons. "Welcome to Earth," Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm sure you have many questions. We're prepared to cooperate with your investigation fully, within certain security parameters." Commander Valen did not take her hand. "Where is the Crethian fleet? What happened to my people?" Chen's expression remained neutral. "The fleet is intact, as your sensors have no doubt confirmed. The crews are deceased. All 3.7 million of them. There was no battle. There was no struggle. They simply died." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. "How?" Dr. Saris asked, her electronic voice sharp with scientific curiosity. "That," Chen said, "is something we'll need to discuss in a more secure location. Please follow me." They were taken to a conference room deep within the station. The room was comfortable but windowless, and the investigation team noticed that the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Chen took a seat at the head of the table and gestured for them to sit. "Before we begin," she said, "I need to establish something. Earth did not start this conflict. We did not want this conflict. For 6 months we attempted diplomatic resolution. We offered to share the asteroid field resources. We proposed joint operations. We even offered to withdraw entirely if the Crethian High Command would agree to formal borders that would prevent future disputes. The Crethians rejected all offers," Ambassador Thorne said quietly. "I reviewed the diplomatic logs on our journey here." Chen nodded. "They did. And then they issued their final ultimatum. Withdraw all human presence from the disputed zone within 10 days, or face military consequences. We withdrew. We pulled back every mining operation, every survey vessel, every human presence." She paused. "And then the Armada came anyway." Commander Valen's scales rippled with agitation. The High Command decided that humanity posed a long-term threat. They moved to neutralize that threat permanently. "They came to commit genocide," Chen said, her voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. Their communications made that clear. Every human settlement in the Sol system was to be destroyed. Earth itself was to be cleansed. That was the word they used. "So you destroyed them first," Valen said. "No," Chen replied. "We stopped them. There's a difference." Dr. Saris leaned forward, her suit's lights pulsing with interest. "Explain the difference, please." "From a practical standpoint, the result appears identical." Chen stood and walked to a wall panel. She pressed her palm against it and the wall became transparent, revealing a view of Earth below. The planet turned slowly, blue and green and beautiful, clouds swirling in endless patterns. 11 billion people live on that world, Chin said softly. 11 billion lives that the Cretan High Command deemed expendable. When their fleet entered our space, we tried one last time to communicate. We broadcast on every channel in every language we knew, asking them to reconsider. They responded by targeting our orbital habitats. Stations like this one where families live, where children go to school. She turned back to face them. They gave us a choice. Die or defend ourselves. What weapon did you use? Commander Valen demanded. What technology could kill 3.7 million beings without leaving any evidence of combat? Chin returned to her seat. That information is classified at the highest level of Earth's security apparatus. What I can tell you is this. We did not use conventional weapons. We did not fire missiles or energy beams. We did not engage in ship-to-ship combat. What we used was something entirely different, something that we discovered decades ago and hoped we would never need to employ. That's not an answer, Valen growled. It's the only answer I'm authorized to give in this setting, Chin replied. However, if you wish to understand what happened, truly understand it, I can arrange for you to board the Cretan flagship. You can examine the vessels, the crew, the systems. You can see for yourselves what occurred. After that, if you still have questions, we can discuss further disclosure. Ambassador Thorne studied the human woman carefully. You're being remarkably forthcoming for someone who claims security concerns. Because we want the galaxy to understand, Chin said. We want the Assembly to know what happened here and why it happened. We don't want to be viewed as aggressors or as a threat. But we also want to make something absolutely clear. She met each of their gazes in turn. Earth will never allow another attempt like this. Any species, any empire, any force that comes to our system with the intent to destroy us will face the same fate as the Cretan Armada. That's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. The room was silent. We're prepared to take you to the flagship immediately, Chin continued. We have a shuttle standing by. You can bring whatever scanning equipment you need. You'll have full access to conduct your investigation. The only thing we ask is that you report your findings accurately to the Assembly. Commander Valen stood slowly, his military bearing rigid. We will report what we find, Captain Chin. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all we ask, Chin said. The shuttle ride to the Cretan flagship was short but felt endless. Through the viewport they could see the vast armada stretching out in all directions. Ships of every size and class, all dark, all silent, all dead. The flagship, the Dominance, was a massive battlecruiser that had served as the command center for countless Cretan military operations. It had participated in the subjugation of 7 different species over its operational lifetime. Now it drifted like a tomb, its weapons cold, its engines silent. The shuttle docked at an emergency airlock. Captain Chin had accompanied them, along with 2 human technicians who carried equipment for opening the sealed ship. The boarding process was routine, almost mundane. The airlock opened smoothly. The interior lighting flickered on as they entered, powered by the investigation team's portable generators. The first thing Commander Valen noticed was the temperature. It was cold, far colder than Cretan ships normally operated. Life support had failed when the crew died, and the ship's internal temperature had gradually equalized with the surrounding space. The second thing he noticed was the smell. Or rather, the lack of it. There was no scent of death, no decay, no biological breakdown. Just stale, cold air that hadn't circulated in days. They found the first body in a corridor near the docking bay. A young Cretan officer, frozen in mid-stride. His face showed no pain, no fear. Just a slight expression of confusion, as if he had been interrupted in the middle of a thought and simply forgotten to continue. Dr. Saris scanned the body with her instruments. No signs of trauma. No cellular damage. No toxins in the system. Neural activity ceased instantaneously. It's as if someone simply turned him off. They moved deeper into the ship and the bodies multiplied. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. All frozen in whatever they had been doing when death came. Some sat at their stations. Some stood in corridors. A few were in the mess hall, meals still on their trays. None showed any sign of struggle. On the bridge they found Admiral Jean, the fleet commander. He sat in his command chair, his eyes open and empty, staring at screens that showed only static. His clawed hands rested on the armrests in a posture of casual alertness, as if he were simply waiting for a report from one of his officers. Commander Valen approached slowly, his own hands trembling slightly. He had known Jean. They had served together decades ago, before Valen had left Crethean military service for the Assembly. Jin had been a good officer, strict but fair, proud but not cruel. Now he was just another corpse. What did this? Valen whispered. He turned to Captain Qin, who stood at the entrance to the bridge, watching quietly. What weapon causes death like this? Qin stepped forward, her boots making soft sounds on the deck plating. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense, Commander. What killed these people wasn't something that exploded or burned or poisoned. It was something more fundamental. Explain, Dr. Saris demanded, her instruments still scanning the dead admiral. Qin took a breath. We call it the silent cascade. It's a quantum-based consciousness disruptor. It targets specific neural patterns associated with hostile intent and aggression. When activated, it creates a cascading wave function collapse across all targeted biological systems simultaneously. The scientific terminology hung in the air like a foreign language. In simpler terms, Qin continued, it identifies beings who intend harm and turns off their consciousness. Instantly. Painlessly. Completely. Ambassador Thorne found his voice first. That's impossible. Nothing can do that. Neural patterns are too complex, too individual. You can't just turn off consciousness. We thought the same thing when we first discovered the technology, Qin admitted. But we were wrong. The quantum patterns that underlie consciousness are more universal than we realized. Under the right conditions, with the right application of quantum field manipulation, those patterns can be disrupted across multiple individuals simultaneously. Commander Valen turned slowly to face her. How many can you target at once? Qin met his gaze steadily. The theoretical limit is unknown. The practical limit appears to be approximately 4 million individuals within a radius of 10 million kilometers. The Crethean armada was well within both ranges. The implications crashed through Commander Valen's mind like a tidal wave. A weapon that could kill millions instantly across vast distances with no defense possible. A weapon that left infrastructure intact but eliminated all resistance. A weapon that made traditional military power completely obsolete. Where did you get this technology? Dr. Saris asked, her electronic voice pitched higher with something that might have been excitement or horror. We didn't get it, Qin said quietly. We found it. 150 years ago, a human deep-sea exploration team discovered ruins on the ocean floor. Ancient structures, far older than human civilization, built by someone or something that existed on Earth long before we did. The technology was contained within those structures, along with extensive documentation and warnings. The precursors, Ambassador Thorne breathed. The legends are true. Qin nodded. Whatever you call them, they were real. And they left this technology behind, along with instructions on how to use it and why they built it. According to their records, they created the silent cascade as a defensive measure against a threat that was consuming entire sectors of the galaxy. A threat that could only be stopped by eliminating it completely and instantly. And you used it against us, Commander Valen said, his voice hollow. We used it to stop 3.7 million beings from committing genocide, Qin corrected. We didn't want to. We hoped we would never have to. But when your armada entered our system with the stated intent of exterminating every human alive, we made a choice. Them or us. She walked to the view screen and gestured at the peaceful planet visible below. 11 billion people still live because we made that choice, Commander. 11 billion lives that would have been erased if we had chosen differently. I understand that you lost people here. I understand the weight of that loss. But before you judge us, I need you to understand something else. Qin turned back to face them, and for the first time, they saw emotion break through her professional demeanor. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her voice tight with controlled pain. Do you think this was easy? Do you think we simply activated some machine and went back to our lives? Every human on Earth felt it when the cascade activated. 11 billion people, connected for one terrible moment, all focused on the same desperate need to survive. We felt those deaths, Commander. Every single one. 3.7 million consciousnesses ending simultaneously, and we experienced it all. She wiped at her eyes roughly. It nearly broke us. 4 days afterward, people couldn't function. They just sat and wept, overwhelmed by the weight of what we had done. Even though we had no choice, even though it was self-defense, we still carry the knowledge that we ended millions of lives in an instant. That burden will be with humanity forever. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the investigation team's equipment. We're showing you this, Qin continued, her voice steadying, because we want the galaxy to understand. Earth possesses the capability to defend itself absolutely. Any fleet, any invasion force, any threat that comes to our system will face the same fate. But we take no joy in that power. We wish we didn't have it. We wish the universe was different. She looked at each of them in turn. But it isn't different. And so we will keep this power, and we will use it if we must, and we will bear the weight of that responsibility. That's the truth you came here to find, investigators. That's what happened to the Crethean Armada. Now you need to decide what to tell the galaxy. Commander Valen stood among the bodies of his people, looking at the human woman who had just explained how they had died. He thought of Admiral Jean, frozen in his command chair. He thought of the 3.7 million Cretheans who would never return home. He thought of the reports he would have to file, the families he would have to inform, the truth he would have to reveal. And he thought of the 11 billion humans who lived because those 3.7 million had died. The mathematics of survival were brutal and simple. One side had to lose for the other to continue existing. The Cretheans had forced that equation. Earth had simply solved it. We need to return to the witness, Valen said finally. We have seen enough. As they left the Dominance, leaving its silent crew behind, none of them spoke. There was nothing to say that could encompass the magnitude of what they had learned. Behind them, the Ghost Fleet drifted in eternal formation, a monument to the day that humanity had revealed its true nature to the galaxy. Not as victims. Not as prey. But as survivors who would do whatever was necessary to remain alive. The question now was what the galaxy would do with that knowledge. The revelation. The journey back to Station Unity felt longer than the trip out, though it took the same amount of time. Commander Valen stood at the viewport of the shuttle, watching the Ghost Fleet recede into the distance. Behind him, Dr. Saris methodically reviewed the sensor data they had collected, her containment suit's lights pulsing in rhythmic patterns that suggested deep concentration. Ambassador Thorne sat in silence, his hands folded in his lap, his expression unreadable. Captain Chin had given them space, sitting at the front of the shuttle near the pilot. She understood that they needed time to process what they had witnessed. The dead did not speak, but their silence screamed volumes about the new reality facing the galaxy. When they docked at Station Unity, Chin led them to a different location than before. This time, they descended deeper into the station, passing through multiple security checkpoints. Each checkpoint was staffed by humans who greeted them politely but whose eyes held a wariness that had not been present during their initial arrival. They entered a large observation deck with floor-to-ceiling windows that provided an unobstructed view of Earth. The planet dominated the view, its oceans shimmering in the sunlight, its continents clearly visible beneath swirling white clouds. It was a beautiful world, vibrant and alive. Waiting for them in the observation deck were 3 other humans. Chin made introductions. This is Dr. Sarah Kimura, head of Earth's Quantum Research Division. This is General Marcus Webb, Commander of Planetary Defense. And this is Chancellor David Okonkwo, representing the United Earth Council. The Chancellor was an elderly man with dark skin and silver hair. He moved slowly using a walking stick, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He gestured to a curved seating area arranged before the windows. Please sit. I imagine you have questions. We will answer what we can. Commander Valen remained standing. The Galactic Assembly will demand full disclosure. They will want to know everything about this silent cascade technology. They will want to know how it was developed, how it functions, and whether Earth possesses additional weapons of similar capability. Chancellor Okonkwo nodded slowly. We anticipated these demands. The answer is no. We will not provide full technical specifications for the silent cascade. We will not share the underlying quantum mechanics that make it function. We will not reveal the location of the precursor ruins where we discovered the technology. He paused. However, we will share enough information to help the galaxy understand what happened and why. That will not satisfy the Assembly, Ambassador Thorne said quietly. They will view incomplete disclosure as a threat. Then they will have to live with feeling threatened, General Webb said. His voice was rough, the voice of someone who had spent decades making difficult decisions. Earth has spent 2 centuries being threatened by species more powerful than us. We adapted. The galaxy will have to do the same. Dr. Saris finally spoke, her electronic voice cutting through the tension. I have been analyzing the sensor data from the Crethean vessels. The cause of death is consistent across all crew members. Instantaneous cessation of neural activity with no degradation of biological systems. The pattern suggests a quantum-level disruption of consciousness itself. She turned her glowing form toward Dr. Kimura. This technology operates on principles that should not be possible according to our understanding of quantum mechanics. The uncertainty principle alone should prevent such precise targeting. Dr. Kimura smiled slightly. It would if consciousness were a purely localized phenomenon. But the precursors understood something that we are only beginning to grasp. Consciousness is not confined to individual brains. It exists as a quantum field that connects all sentient beings at a fundamental level. Most species never learn to access that field consciously, but it's always there, underlying every thought, every decision, every moment of awareness. She stood and walked to a control panel on the wall. The windows darkened and holographic displays appeared in the air before them. The displays showed complex mathematical equations and three-dimensional models of quantum wave functions. The silent cascade works by identifying specific patterns within the consciousness field, Dr. Kimura continued. Patterns associated with hostile intent, with the decision to cause harm, with the active desire to destroy. When the system detects these patterns at a threshold level, meaning when a sufficient number of individuals are actively intending harm toward a specific target, it can initiate a cascading collapse of those wave functions. You're describing selective quantum murder, Dr. Saris said, her voice pitched with fascination and horror. You're collapsing the probability wave of consciousness itself. That's one way to phrase it, Dr. Kimura agreed. The precursors described it differently. They called it the final shield. A weapon that could only be used against those who were actively attempting genocide. The technology is fundamentally defensive. It cannot be activated without genuine existential threat. It cannot target individuals who are not actively engaged in attempting mass extermination. Commander Valen's scales rippled with agitation. How do you define existential threat? How do you determine genuine intent? These are subjective judgments. Not when 11 billion people agree, Captain Chin said quietly. The silent cascade requires consensus. Not just from a few leaders or military commanders, but from the population as a whole. It can only activate when a civilization collectively recognizes that it faces complete destruction and chooses to defend itself. Chancellor Okonkwo gestured to the equations floating in the air. When the Crethean Armada entered our system with the stated intent of exterminating humanity, every person on Earth understood what was happening. 11 billion individuals, all facing the same threat, all reaching the same conclusion. We were about to die. All of us. Every child, every family, every community, every culture. The Cretheans had made their intentions clear. He paused, his aged face showing the weight of memory. I was in my home when it happened. I was holding my granddaughter, thinking about how she would never grow up, never have children of her own, never see another sunrise. And in that moment I felt something I had never experienced before. A connection. Not just to my family but to everyone. Every human alive, all feeling the same thing, all understanding that this was the end. The collective consciousness reached a critical threshold, Dr. Kimura said. 11 billion minds, all focused on survival, all recognizing the threat, all making the same choice. The silent cascade activated automatically in response to that consensus. It identified every being within range who intended our destruction and ended their ability to carry out that intent. Ambassador Thorne leaned forward. You're saying your entire population became a weapon. We became a shield, Chancellor Okonkwo corrected. There's a difference. A weapon seeks to harm. A shield responds to harm being inflicted. The silent cascade cannot be used for conquest. It cannot be used for territorial expansion. It cannot be used to settle disputes or gain advantage. It only activates when an entire civilization faces extinction and chooses to survive. General Webb added, we've run simulations. Thousands of them. The technology cannot be weaponized in the traditional sense. If we attempted to activate it against a species that wasn't actively trying to exterminate us, it would fail. The consciousness field won't support aggression. It only supports self-defense. Convenient, Commander Valen said, his voice heavy with skepticism. You possess a weapon of unprecedented power and claim it can only be used defensively. How can the galaxy trust that assertion? Because we've had this technology for 150 years, Captain Chin replied, and this is the first time we've ever used it. We could have activated it decades ago during territorial disputes with the Valorians. We could have used it when the Xinthian collective attempted to establish mining operations in our asteroid belt without permission. We could have used it a dozen times when we felt threatened or pressed or disadvantaged. She gestured toward the planet below. But we didn't. Because those situations, while tense, while difficult, were not existential threats. They were conflicts that could be resolved through diplomacy, through negotiation, through compromise. The Crethean Armada was different. They came with the explicit intent to kill every human being alive. They broadcast that intent clearly. They gave us no alternative. Dr. Saris had been studying the holographic equations intently. The mathematics are elegant, she said slowly. Almost beautiful in their simplicity once you accept the underlying premise of quantum consciousness. But there's something here I don't understand. She pointed to a specific section of the display. This variable represents the range of effect. According to these calculations, the silent cascade should have a maximum effective radius of approximately 10 million kilometers. The Crethean fleet was well within that range. But what happens if a threat comes from beyond that range? What if an enemy attacks from multiple vectors simultaneously? Dr. Kimura's expression grew somber. That's the limitation of the technology. It's purely defensive and purely reactive. It cannot prevent an attack. It can only respond to one. If a species chose to bombard Earth from outside the effective range, we would have no defense except conventional military measures. Which you don't appear to possess, Commander Valen observed. Your orbital defenses are minimal. Your fleet is small and primarily designed for transport and system patrol. You've invested everything in this one defensive system. Not everything, General Webb said. But yes, our military infrastructure is limited compared to major galactic powers. We made a choice long ago. We could spend our resources building fleets and weapons platforms, engaging in an arms race we could never win, or we could focus on defense and deterrence. We chose the latter. Chancellor Okonkwo stood slowly, using his walking stick for support. He moved to the windows and looked down at Earth. Humanity has a long and bloody history. Before we unified, we fought among ourselves constantly. Wars that killed millions, weapons that could reduce cities to ash in seconds, conflicts driven by ideology and resources and simple human cruelty. We know what military escalation looks like. We know where that path leads. He turned back to face them. When we discovered the silent cascade, we had a choice. We could announce our capability immediately, use it as leverage to gain power and territory in the galaxy. Or we could remain quiet, appear weak, and hope that we would never need to use it. We chose secrecy not out of deception but out of fear. Fear that if other species knew what we possessed, they would view us as a threat and attempt to destroy us before we could defend ourselves. And now? Ambassador Thorne asked. Now that your secret is revealed? Now we hope for understanding, the Chancellor replied. We hope that the galaxy will recognize that Earth has no territorial ambitions. We don't want to conquer. We don't want to dominate. We simply want to live our lives in peace on the world where we evolved. Is that truly so much to ask? Commander Valen moved to stand beside the Chancellor, both of them looking down at the planet below. The Crethean High Command will not accept this outcome. 3.7 million of our people are dead. Our greatest fleet is destroyed. They will demand retribution. Let them demand, General Webb said flatly. If they send another fleet with the intent to destroy us, that fleet will meet the same fate. We will not hesitate to defend ourselves again. And if they bombard you from beyond your defensive range? Valen asked. What then? Captain Shin answered. Then we die. We've accepted that possibility. But we will not die passively and we will not die alone. Any species that attempts to exterminate humanity from a safe distance will find that we have contingencies for that scenario as well. Contingencies we hope never to employ but which exist nonetheless. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Dr. Saris processed them methodically, her scientific mind working through the logical progressions. You've created a mutual assured destruction scenario. Any species that attacks you faces certain death, even if they succeed in destroying Earth. We prefer to call it mutual survival, Chancellor Okonkwo said. If no one attacks us, no one dies. It's a simple equation. The galaxy doesn't operate on simple equations, Ambassador Thorne said. There are 47 member species in the Assembly, each with their own interests, their own fears, their own calculations of risk and benefit. Some will accept your explanation. Others will view you as an existential threat that must be eliminated regardless of cost. Then those species will have to decide if eliminating us is worth the price, the Chancellor replied. We won't make that decision for them. We'll simply make the cost clear. Commander Valen turned away from the window, his military bearing rigid. I need to ask you something directly and I need an honest answer. The silent cascade killed 3.7 million Cretheans. Was their death painful? Dr. Kimura shook her head. No. The collapse of consciousness is instantaneous. There's no time for pain, no awareness of dying. One moment they existed and the next moment they didn't. From their perspective, nothing happened. They simply ceased to be. Small mercy, Valen muttered. He looked at the Chancellor. My people were following orders. Many of them were young, barely past their first molting. They joined the military because it was tradition, because it offered security, because they wanted to serve something greater than themselves. They didn't decide to exterminate humanity. The High Command made that decision. I know, the Chancellor said softly. And I grieve for them. I grieve for every life lost, regardless of the circumstances. But Commander, I need you to understand something. Those young soldiers, following orders, carrying out tradition, they were still coming to kill my granddaughter. They were still going to reduce our cities to ash. Intent doesn't matter when the result is genocide. He moved closer to Valen, looking up at the taller alien with eyes that held both compassion and resolve. I wish we lived in a universe where the silent cascade had never been necessary. I wish the precursors had never built it. I wish your people had never come to our system. But wishes don't change reality. We did what we had to do to survive. If placed in the same situation again, we would make the same choice. The observation deck fell silent. Through the windows, Earth continued its slow rotation, indifferent to the weight of the conversation taking place above it. 11 billion people went about their lives, unaware that their survival had created a crisis that might reshape galactic civilization. Dr. Saris broke the silence. I need to ask about the precursors. You said you found their ruins 150 years ago. What else did you discover? What other technologies did they leave behind? Dr. Kimura exchanged a glance with Captain Chin before answering. That information remains classified. What I can tell you is that the silent cascade is not the only precursor technology we've studied. There are other systems, other discoveries, other capabilities. Most are theoretical, some are practical, all are carefully secured. More weapons? Valen asked. Some weapons, some tools, some technologies we don't fully understand, Dr. Kimura replied. The precursors were far more advanced than any current galactic civilization. They operated on principles that seem almost like magic until you grasp the underlying science. The silent cascade is actually one of their simpler creations. Ambassador Thorne stood abruptly. You're telling us that Earth possesses additional precursor technology beyond the silent cascade, and you're refusing to disclose what those technologies are? Would you disclose your defensive capabilities to potential adversaries? General Webb countered. We're being more transparent than we need to be, Ambassador. We've allowed you to examine the Crethean fleet. We've explained how the silent cascade functions. We've shared information that compromises our security. But we will not reveal everything. Some secrets must remain secret. The Assembly will not accept that, Thorne insisted. They'll demand full disclosure. They'll threaten sanctions, isolation, possibly preemptive action to neutralize perceived threats. Let them try, Webb said grimly. We've survived worse. Chancellor Okonkwo raised his hand, a gesture calling for calm. Please. We're not here to issue threats or ultimatums. We're here to find a path forward that allows for mutual existence. Ambassador Thorne, I understand the Assembly's concerns. I understand the fear that humanity's capabilities generate. But consider the alternative. If we had revealed our technology earlier, what would have happened? Would the galaxy have left us in peace, or would they have moved to eliminate us as a potential threat? Thorne sat down slowly. Probably the latter, he admitted. Any species possessing the capability to kill millions instantly would be viewed as an unacceptable risk. Exactly, the Chancellor said. That's why we remained hidden. That's why we appeared weak. We were trying to avoid exactly the scenario that the Cretheans forced upon us. We wanted to be left alone. Instead, we were targeted for extermination. He moved back to his seat, lowering himself carefully. Now our secret is revealed. The galaxy knows what we can do. So we're offering a compact. Earth will not use the silent cascade aggressively. We will not expand beyond our system. We will not interfere in galactic politics or power structures. We ask only that we be left in peace. Any species that honors that arrangement has nothing to fear from us. And any species that doesn't? Commander Valen asked. We'll learn what the Cretheans learned, General Webb answered. We will defend ourselves absolutely. No fleet, no matter how large, can threaten us successfully. That's not arrogance. It's simply fact. Dr. Saris had been processing the information throughout the conversation, her analytical mind working through implications and probabilities. There's another factor to consider, she said. The silent cascade requires collective consensus to activate. It cannot function without the agreement of Earth's entire population. That creates a vulnerability. What if a threat emerges gradually? What if an adversary uses subterfuge or psychological warfare to prevent human consensus? Without unanimous agreement, your defense fails. Dr. Kimura nodded. You've identified the technology's primary limitation. The silent cascade is not a perfect defense. It requires clarity of threat and unity of response. A sufficiently cunning adversary might find ways to exploit that limitation. You're admitting a weakness, Valen said, surprised. We're admitting reality, Captain Chin replied. We don't claim to be invulnerable. We don't claim that the silent cascade makes us immune to all threats. What we claim is that any straightforward attempt to exterminate humanity will fail. That's enough to deter most aggression. Most but not all, Ambassador Thorne observed. There are species in the galaxy who view deterrence as a challenge rather than a warning. The Creathians were one of them. There are others. Then those species will have to learn the same lesson, the Chancellor said. We won't seek them out. We won't provoke them. But we won't be victims either. Commander Valen walked to the windows and placed one clawed hand against the transparent surface. Below, Earth turned in serene indifference. Somewhere on that planet, the Chancellor's granddaughter was alive because 3.7 million Creathians were dead. The mathematics of survival were brutal but undeniable. I need to return to the assembly, he said finally. I need to make my report. But before I go, I want to ask one more question. Do you have regrets? Do you wish you had found another way? Chancellor Okonkwo's aged face showed every one of his years. Every single day, he said quietly. Every day I wake up knowing that millions died because of the choice we made. I understand that we had no alternative. I understand that our survival required their deaths. But understanding doesn't erase the weight of that responsibility. He looked at each of the investigators in turn. That's what makes us different from the precursors, I think. They built the silent cascade as a tool, something to be used when necessary without emotional burden. We can't do that. We feel every death. We carry the weight of those 3.7 million consciousnesses ending. It nearly destroyed us psychologically. But you survived, Dr. Saris observed. We survived, the Chancellor agreed. Because 11 billion people shared the burden together. No single human bears the weight alone. We all carry it, all share it, all live with the knowledge of what we did to ensure our continued existence. He stood once more, moving to stand before Commander Valen. When you return to the assembly, when you make your report, please tell them this. Tell them that Earth does not celebrate what happened here. Tell them that we grieve for the Creathian dead as we would grieve for our own. Tell them that we want peace not because we fear war but because we understand its true cost. And if the assembly decides that peace with Earth is impossible? Valen asked. If they conclude that humanity is too dangerous to exist? Then they will have made their choice, General Webb said, and they will face the consequences. We will not initiate conflict, but we will end it. The meeting concluded shortly after. The investigation team was provided with extensive documentation, sensor logs, historical records, and theoretical analyses of the silent cascade. Everything except the technical specifications that would allow another species to develop similar technology. As they prepared to depart, Captain Chin escorted them back to their ship. At the airlock she paused. Commander Valen, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for the loss of your people. I met Admiral Zhen once, years ago during a trade negotiation. He was a good officer, honorable in his own way. He didn't deserve to die like that. None of them did. Valen looked at her for a long moment. But they came to kill you, he said finally. They came to commit genocide. So they died instead. Yes, Chin agreed. That's exactly what happened. The galaxy will struggle with this, Valen said. For millennia, power has meant military strength, territorial control, technological superiority. Earth has changed that equation. You've made traditional military power obsolete against you. That will frighten people. I know, Chin said. But fear doesn't have to lead to conflict. It can also lead to understanding, to respect, to mutual survival. That's what we hope for. Hope is a luxury, Valen replied. The galaxy runs on fear and power. Then maybe it's time for the galaxy to change, Chin said quietly. The Witness departed Earth orbit 2 hours later. As the planet receded in the distance, Commander Valen stood at the viewport, watching until Earth was just another star among millions. Dr. Saris joined him. What will you tell the assembly? The truth, Valen said. That humanity possesses a defensive capability that makes them effectively immune to conventional military assault. That they have no territorial ambitions but will defend themselves absolutely against existential threats. That any species considering action against Earth should understand the cost. That won't satisfy everyone, Saris observed. No, Valen agreed. It won't. Some species will call for preemptive action. They'll argue that Earth is too dangerous to leave unchecked, that their defensive technology could be turned offensive, that humanity represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. What do you think? Saris asked. Valen was silent for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that humanity has done something remarkable. They've created a form of power that cannot be used for conquest, only for survival. They've made themselves untouchable not through aggression, but through deterrence. And they've done it while maintaining their values, their ethics, their grief over lives taken even in self-defense. He turned away from the viewport. I think the galaxy should leave them alone. Not because we fear them, although fear is certainly justified, but because they're not our enemy. They've never been our enemy. We made them one and they responded the only way they could. The Creathian High Command won't see it that way, Saris said. No, Valen agreed. They won't. They'll see only the loss, the humiliation, the threat to their power. They'll demand retribution. And if they send another fleet? Then more Creathians will die, Valen said flatly. And the cycle will continue until either the Creathians accept reality or they cease to exist as a species. Ambassador Thorn had been listening from across the cabin. There's another possibility, he said. The Assembly could declare Earth a protected world. Establish a quarantine zone. Forbid any military action within the Sol system. Remove the temptation for conflict by making it politically untenable. The Creathians would never accept that, Valen said. Then the Creathians would be violating Assembly protocols, Thorn replied. They would face the collective response of 46 other species. That might give even the High Command pause. Dr. Saris pulsed thoughtfully. It's possible. The Assembly has never encountered a situation quite like this. Traditional power structures don't apply. New frameworks might be necessary. The journey back to the Assembly station took 3 days. During that time, the investigation team worked on their report, crafting language that was accurate but not inflammatory, comprehensive but not overwhelming. They knew that their words would shape galactic policy for decades, possibly centuries. When they arrived, they were immediately summoned before the full Assembly. The vast chamber was packed, representatives from every member species present. The Creathian delegation sat in their section, their faces unreadable but their body language radiating controlled fury. Commander Valen stood at the central platform and delivered the report. He spoke for 2 hours, detailing everything they had discovered, everything they had witnessed, everything they had learned. He held nothing back, presenting the facts with military precision and emotional honesty. When he finished, the chamber erupted. Some representatives demanded immediate action against Earth. Others called for caution. A few suggested that humanity be invited to join the Assembly as a full member, while others insisted that Earth should be isolated completely. The Creathian representative, Supreme Commander Thane, demanded to speak. He stood in his section, his green scales dark with rage. The Assembly authorized containment action against Earth, he growled. We acted within established protocols. And we were destroyed by a weapon of unprecedented power, a weapon that humanity kept secret, a weapon that violates every convention of warfare. He pointed at the holographic display showing Earth. This species cannot be trusted. They have proven themselves to be deceptive, dangerous, and willing to commit mass murder. They must be eliminated before they threaten other species. The chamber buzzed with argument. Then Ambassador Thorn stood, requesting permission to speak. Supreme Commander Thane speaks of deception and trust, Thorn said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. But let us examine the facts honestly. Earth was classified as a pest species and marked for extermination not because they posed a genuine threat, but because they refused to yield territory that the Creathians wanted. The containment action was not about security. It was about conquest. He paused, letting the words sink in. Humanity kept their defensive capabilities secret because they knew that revealing them would make them a target. They were proven correct. The moment the Creathians perceived any resistance, they moved to exterminate an entire species. 11 billion sentient beings were to be killed because they occupied space the Creathians desired. They killed 3.7 million of our people, Thane roared. After you attempted to kill 11 billion of theirs, Thorn shot back. The mathematics are not complicated, Supreme Commander. You started a war of extermination and lost. That does not make you the victim. The argument continued for hours, then days. The assembly was deadlocked, unable to reach consensus on how to respond to the Earth situation. Finally, Elder Kresh of the Luminary Council proposed a solution. We cannot destroy Earth. Their defensive capabilities make that impossible without accepting catastrophic losses. We cannot trust them completely, as they have proven themselves capable of deception. But we also cannot ignore them or pretend they don't exist. Therefore, I propose a new classification. The holographic display shifted, showing a new designation. Earth will be classified as a sovereign defensive world. No military action will be permitted within their solar system without unanimous assembly approval. They will not be required to join the assembly or follow assembly protocols, but they will be invited to participate in certain councils and trade agreements. They will be left alone as they have requested, but they will also be monitored to ensure they honor their commitment to non-expansion. The proposal was debated for another week. In the end, it passed with a narrow majority. The Creathians voted against it, as did several other militaristic species. But enough representatives recognized the pragmatic reality. Earth could not be conquered, and attempting to do so would only result in more deaths. Commander Valen returned to his quarters after the final vote, exhausted and emotionally drained. He found a message waiting for him, transmitted from Earth. It was from Chancellor Okonkwo. Commander Valen, I have learned of the Assembly's decision. On behalf of humanity, I want to thank you for your honest reporting and your efforts to find a peaceful resolution. I know this was not easy for you given the loss of your people. Please know that Earth honors their memory and grieves alongside you. We hope that someday our species can meet not as enemies or adversaries, but as neighbors who simply want to exist in peace. Until that day comes, we will remain in our corner of the galaxy, living our lives, raising our children, and hoping that the universe becomes a kinder place. Thank you, Commander. Thank you for understanding. Valen read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it and turned off the console. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere among those stars, Earth turned in its orbit, defended by a power that could kill millions but wielded by people who grieved every death they caused. The galaxy had changed. The old rules no longer applied. Humanity had proven that survival did not require conquest, that strength could exist alongside compassion.